All right, here we are again. This will be my fourth discussion. I'll be talking with Brian Frenette of formerly of They and the Children. He's now in a band called Ritual Clearing. We're gonna talk about the Connecticut hardcore scene, the New England hardcore scene, just everything. He created Friendly Fest. If you ever went down to Connecticut and witnessed that, the amazing fests. Just an all around great dude. So
Buddy,
Hey, what's going on, Brian?
how you doing, man?
How you doing, my friend?
Doing all right, thanks. Having a good
Nah,
time.
well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, happy to do it. It's humbling to be asked to talk about anything, and an extreme privilege to talk to anyone at this point because been just like hunkered down. So it's
Yeah,
delightful.
I know. Yeah, reminiscing about shows when there's no shows happening for due to COVID is a rough thing. So, uh,
Yeah,
I just try to post as many videos as I can of back in the day, and even like the hip hop stuff that I've been going to recently. But just trying to get people. I mean, I miss live shows so bad. It hurts.
yeah, man. It's been wild. Like that's definitely like a lot of the people that I've talked to are just like, oh, you must be really hurting, man, because like I still am going to things and doing stuff where I'm like, oh yeah, it's definitely like a drop off. Like you think you're going to be, I don't know, probably had a plan for the year and now you don't have a plan
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah, I
But
know exactly.
I actually
So
went to see Dinosaur Jr. Friday at
I
this like
saw that. I saw
bar in
that.
Connecticut, and it was awesome. So I was like, wow, if I have to like find my compromise, like ironically with a band I was into when I was like 13 years old, that's still playing shows that I get to go see now when I'm, pushing 40 is pretty sweet. So I'll take what I can get.
How was that show? Actually, was it?
It was great. It was great. It was well run. It was relaxing. All of it was good. And they're always a fun band to see. They played like new songs, which is kind of wild to think about. That band is now reunited, been together longer than they were the first time,
Really?
and
Wow.
put out more records than they did the first time,
Wow, that's crazy.
which is just a bizarre concept. So yeah,
Yeah.
we're all just lucky to be there, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Nice. Yeah. I just wanted to talk. About a bunch of things. Obviously, the last time I had seen you, I mean, it's been a long time.
Wait a
Um,
minute. Yeah.
but we played a show together in Sandown, New Hampshire. Actually,
Right.
it was Bravo fucking Bravo's last show that they had,
Yeah.
and my old band, the Paper Plane Crash, opened that show, and there's videos on my IG of like all the bands that played that night. But
Yeah.
I think that's the last time I saw you.
That's crazy. Wow. I mean, think about how much life has been lived in between those moments and now.
I know.
That's yeah, man. I mean, that was. I think about how often we were playing. I was talking to somebody that is younger than I am, and was talking about just like the concept of being like the band that would just go to play like every weekend is like, well, we might as well play somewhere was kind of the logic.
Yeah,
I would never fault the logic, but it was definitely like a bizarre. It's like in retrospect, it's like a funny way to spend all the time, but it's like you meet all these people, and here we are. We still like there's still like connections that you've made from those days that
yes,
you didn't like just like this like some people I haven't actually physically seen since 12 years ago,
yeah, yeah,
but
exactly.
if I saw them tomorrow it would be like nothing
Yeah.
transpired, which is bizarre
Well,
to
I
think
mean,
about.
for a while, I mean, I was seeing you pretty much every weekend when you were doing shows in Connecticut. I mean, me and my buddy Brian Asaro and Ed Tracy and Tony
Yeah,
Lombardi would all pack into a car and take the trip down to Connecticut to see all the shows, like at whether it be the Student Union building, or then it started going to the Hillel. But I mean,
yeah.
we were there nonstop, and
And you were there for like, I mean, I think I did the math once where I think from I started booking shows there in spring of 2001. I did like one or two, and then 2002, 2003. In that 3-year span of time, I probably booked, I think the numbers are like 80
Yeah.
something shows,
Yeah.
which is like a rough, now I look at it, I'm like, man, I had nothing else to do. But like, you know, the world is smaller then. It worked out all right. We're like, you know, you just bringing people through, and being geographically where I was, where we were, it was interesting because you're able to kind of like connect, you know, Western Mass and Boston and Providence and New Hampshire and Connecticut, and everybody was kind of in one. Nobody was from where we were doing it. The only reason we did it there is because I was stuck going to school there, and a
Yeah.
lot
Yeah.
of other people we knew were doing that stuff there. So, you know, that's your sort of, our introduction together was sort of like a, mercifully and I think beautifully, like typical experience, and then just like
Yes.
a bunch of random ass people in a random ass place, and
Yeah.
you know, making the most of it, having a good time, and like living up that moment when everything was like a little bit more, you know, carefree, easy going. When you're, you know, however old we were, it doesn't, even that doesn't really make a difference in just like where we were at that moment with those bands that would just like roll through because like I asked them to. You know, nobody was on
Yeah.
tour. They just like, hey, you gonna be busy in like 8 weeks? You want to come through? And they're like, all right, I guess, and like,
Yeah.
in, which is kind of nice. You know, definitely humbled by how all that kind of came together. And then once they and the children started playing, that was spring of '03. I always had a thing where I was never going to book myself on a show. I was never going to book my own band on a show I booked.
Yeah.
I was sort of, I don't know. I just felt like that was like a weird cop move. Like it was really easy if you're just booking all the things you want to do and then be like, I'll just play all of them. Like,
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I always made sure that if we played anything, we'd play the friendly fests and we'd play first. And that was
Yeah.
always like the deal. Also, I just lot to do that day, so it was good to get that out of the way. But because of all the shows, obviously, like, you know, then it was a little easier to like make connections with people and just be like, oh, hey, you know, you may remember me from this thing. Like, how do we join forces, so to speak? And that worked out really nicely. I mean, that was kind of there was some serendipity there, you know, between that and I think the summer that band started, I went on tour with Wolves as their roadie, and I just had a shoebox full of demos and would just hand them to anybody that was, you know, mildly interested, and that's how I ended up bumping into like there's just people to this day that I still like will see, and they're like, hey man, you remember me from that weird basement in like Indianapolis back in '02? And I was like, oh my god, maybe not, but like,
Yeah.
wild. Like, we have some kind of context for this. It's crazy.
So what got you into booking shows actually? Like how did it all come about where you were like, all right, I'm going to start booking shows, you know, in stores, like, cuz those were basically your first shows you were booking, right? And then it kind of branched onto like I went to a bunch of shows in Waterbury
Yeah.
and I mean obviously Wallingford and
Yeah.
but for my first show that I went to that you set up was in stores.
Okay. Yeah. So I was in like some kind of overachievers group in high school where like the principal like took us all aside and was like, hey, you guys can be part of this. Like, it was definitely not a cool kids club, but it was like, for the principal, it was like the cool kids club. And we met like in the morning before school, and he basically was like, you can do a project, whatever you want your project to be, you can do a project. And I had this, so my like upbringing into like punk and stuff was through like an older cousin of mine.
Yeah.
And he, you know, you get regaled with tales of yore and all this, and so he would tell me about this show at his school and all this crazy stuff, and I just was like, man, I want to do something like that.
Yeah.
And so I told the principal, I was like, I want to book a concert in the cafeteria, and he was sort of like, okay, let's talk about that. And so at the time I was like, I'm going to book a ska concert because it was like 1999 and or at least when you were in high school in 1999, I guess. But so I was going to book this bunch of ska bands I liked, and I was like, we were going to do it was just going to be for charity, so all the money would go to charity. So I booked this concert. It was successful in that money was raised for charity, which is good. It was a mess from any kind of like if a show you wanted to be at, this was not it. It was like 7 bands. It took way too long. Everything was like super dragged out. And
Yeah.
it took all day. But it was definitely like wet my whistle in terms of like, oh, this is fun. But I need, I know how I can do it better.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to learn how many bands was enough bands, but that was my own. Again, I think that was product of the times. But then when I got to college, I was like, oh, college was like a new and weird experience, and I was like, sort of told that you can join all these different clubs and do these different things. And so I was like, well, what's like the punk rock club?
Yeah.
And at UConn, it was like the Drug Free Student Association was like the punk rock club, basically. All the straight edge people were this club. And I think 2 years prior to my joining that club, you'll see the flyer around every once in a while, and it's like a show that that club booked, and it was like Piebald, Jerome's Dream, and Orchid, and a bunch of other bands. But that show, and so that was like that group of people. So you were in with like the right group of people.
Yeah, definitely.
Had some cachet, and by that point, the musical stylings had shifted exponentially for myself in terms of what my interests were, and so I finally kind of worked with these people enough where they were like, again, I started in the fall there, and they were like, hey, in the spring, if you want to book something, you can book something. So I booked again, like some extravagant 7-band show, but booked something there at UConn. And then while at UConn that freshman year, I had met these guys, my friends Matt Yanarella and Ryan Gorman. Ryan Gorman, who was in Name of Children, has been in like every band I've ever been. I met them all at this Elliot Weaker Than show that the radio station at UConn had put on that fall.
Yeah.
So they were all from Waterbury, and I'm from Bristol, and so it was weird just like once I left Bristol to meet people who lived near Bristol and be like, oh, and I was fortunate to come up in high school with a lot of people who were into punk rock and stuff. But these guys were like, oh, there's this record store. You're going to meet Walt. Walt's going to let you book shows there. And like, so again, serendipitously, I was suddenly given like a space.
Yeah.
And set things up. And again, there's a lot of like different weird worlds merging where I just met all these different people that everyone had interests around the same time. And it was just like, who wants to do it? And that my vibe is like, let's do everything. Why not?
Yeah.
Why the fuck not? So like, so that's when it was like this duality of like UConn and Waterbury at the same time. And it was like, when can you do what based on what was available and what made sense? Because that Waterbury spot, if you recall, that shop was tiny.
Yeah, real tiny.
Yeah, so it was cool to take a shot on some things. You're like, oh, these bands are coming through. They just need a crowd. We can get donations. We can probably give them $200 for the drive, and it won't cost us anything. Whereas like a hall at that time was like $300.
Yeah.
And UConn was a gamble in that, like, all right, is anyone going to drive to UConn? Right? Because at that point we didn't have that wasn't like a defined audience.
Yeah.
So everything like was just like trying things out, working things through. And then eventually there was like a rhythm where like we were able to like actually it all clicked, and I was working with a lot of people like Josh from Red Scroll and Matt Yanarella and my friend Russ and a lot of other people, a bunch of folks. We were all kind of doing these things, which is also why it was able to happen at such a clip.
Yeah. And plus there was a lot of Connecticut bands also, like, so, you know what I mean? It was like when we went down there, it was always, at least one Connecticut band playing in the shows that you set up.
Oh,
and,
yeah. I always wanted to make sure that was on display. I mean, selfishly, it's like, well, if they're booked, then they'll come and their friends will come. But, and that's just good, just good marketing. But like, realistically, at the time, I mean, especially I feel like when you're kind of coming into those things, like those local bands, those bands that you like, a band, that's like a bizarre concept, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're like into any kind of art, and like, I was into music when I was young, like a band is like up here, right? A band is like on a pedestal, and like, one now. And like, that was just I mean, it's not a big deal in retrospect, but at the time it was so weird to me.
Yeah.
And so I just knew these guys who were in different bands, and I booked. Definitely, I mean, the joke that I've had from people that I've talked about these things like way back that we're talking about time-wise, like they're like, oh, you just booked the same 2 bands all the time, which is not untrue. But I really liked those two bands, so I
Yeah,
was like some of my dearest friends. So it's like, let's just put them on. But yeah, it was always especially when more out of state people were coming, it was a good way to kind of show like this buffet of what's going on around here. And when you're dealing with a lot of like New York and Boston people, there's a lot of like Connecticut, huh? And you just you gotta like take the
yeah,
love, but then it's like, well, yeah, man, let me show you what we got, and then you can
yeah.
make a decision there.
No, they were. I mean, they were always great shows. I think what got my foot in the door with your shows was I was close with Brian Faber when Transistor first started,
Yeah,
and he was like, "Oh, you got to come down to Yukon and go to these shows." And then that's basically like what me and my friends he got us, told us about it, and then we were a mainstay pretty much with like a lot of the shows you did.
that's awesome. Yeah, I met him. There was, remember that website, Just Another Scene.
Yes.
You remember that website? So like
Yes, I do.
so yeah, justanotherscene.com was like a repository of New England bands and venues. And it was literally like an alphabetized list, hyperlinked of all the bands. And it maybe had a description of like the genre next to it or something.
Yeah, I
And they
think
had a
so.
show, like a really thorough show listing. And I remember, geez, so I was at UConn. It must have been my freshman fall semester. I had just started there, and there was a show. It was Hot Cross for Stella Ford, The Last 40 Seconds, and Transistor.
That was the one in
Was that
Haverhill, Mass, right?
Yeah, it was at Tufts.
Oh, was that Tufts? Oh, because that same lineup played in Haverhill at this place, Exit 23, which you've been to.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I
Um,
mean, I forget. Yeah, it must have been like that. They must have been like a little circle they were doing or
yeah,
something.
they must have just yeah,
The Tough Show was one that I was able to convince someone to drive me to because I was into Hot Cross and I didn't know any of the other bands. I just knew Hot Cross. Like my friend Nick had booked them in Waterbury earlier that summer,
yeah,
and that was all I had. And I just convinced this friend of mine. She drove us up, and I saw Transistor, and I was like, "Oh, this band's cool." And then like afterwards, like I talked to Faber and was just like, "Hey, I'm looking to do things down here," and he was just like, "When you're good, like let me know, like when you're
yeah,
ready." So this must have been 2001 then, not 2000, because I was there in fall of 2000. But anyway, like he and I just stayed in touch. Started, this was like the instant messenger days, so it was just like constantly just chirping at each other all night long because you're just up all night. And then,
yeah,
and I forget what the first show was I booked them on, but it was at that the student union building at UConn, and they were just another like constant where I just really liked them. They were like
yeah.
nice people, good people, and then I went on their first tour that summer of 2000. Maybe it was summer 2001. No, it must have been
Yeah.
summer 2002.
Two.
Yeah,
Yeah.
two, because then 2003 was the Wolves one. But anyway, yeah, it's all blurring together. But yeah, that's how I met Faber. I haven't probably talked to Faber since like 2006 maybe or five or
Well,
something.
I mean, I don't think anybody's talked to Faber. I have
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the light the fuse guys. The light the fuse guys are always like, where's Faber? I'm like, I haven't. I mean, we were close, and then all of a sudden he just kind of disappeared. It was like
Yeah,
he was
I
gone.
hope whatever direction that guy went, I hope he's doing all right, figured it out. But yeah, I mean, for that time, it was like it was a nice entry point to get to know. Again, because they were on like Level Playing, and that was like a label that at least my friends and I held in some regard because of the roster at that time. And all of a sudden, there was like this like younger our age band that was on the label, and they were like accessible and they were cool, like good people, good band, and they were like they'd return their emails, that kind of thing. It was like,
Yeah,
this is like a fun concept. So yeah, that kind of went off from there. But that also helped because then when they were hosting other Level Playing bands up in New Hampshire, and Boston was sometimes, Boston was always a tricky place to book.
yeah,
Not always, but sometimes. And then all of a sudden you could do like Boston, New Hampshire, Connecticut in a weekend
yeah,
and leave New York, and it made sense.
Yeah.
So
Wasn't it weird though that like Maine never jumped on that little like
yeah,
I don't think I've ever recorded well back in the day when um Safe and Sound was happening in Rochester in the late '90s. Maine was hopping for hardcore, but
it was
then
like
all
a
of a
venue up
sudden,
there, right? There was like some venue that was doing a lot up in was it
yeah,
Port.
there Zoots. There was a place called Zoots, and I forget what the other place was, but there was shows all the time up there. And then once 2001 hit, it was like dead.
Yeah,
No shows happened up there.
yeah.
It was just a weird thing
It's
because
wild
that
how quick that stuff can like come and go, right? I mean, I remember my only like recollection of stuff in Maine must have been after that, and it was just like this town that we'd go to vacation in York, Maine, and they would have like a come and correct show or something. It would be like an
yeah,
8 band
yeah,
come and correct show at like the Elks or something, and it was like, I don't understand that, and I don't need to go see come and correct, but like what a wild concept that is.
yeah,
But yeah, you're right. I mean, it was weird that it never took off because Maine wasn't that far, especially like Portland area.
yeah,
But I think
yeah,
the
exactly.
people I met who were from Maine were all people that were like in college somewhere else. You
Yeah,
know, like they were at college at like they were at like Marlboro College, and that was like the main people I knew were like out in southern Vermont somewhere.
yeah, yeah,
They were trying to do their thing. So yeah, it was definitely weird how all the towns kind of. I mean, yeah, again, like would Stores, Connecticut be a place anyone would have predicted? Probably not, because again,
yeah,
everyone that I knew from the state of Connecticut was mad because they had to drive almost an hour to get to the show in the state of Connecticut. And
yeah,
Yukon is not near anything, so especially because a lot of people were in either like Waterbury and New Haven, and that's like might as well be it's almost two hour drive.
yeah, yeah,
They were coming up every weekend, which was awesome, but I never took that for granted. You had to always have like insure or give them a reason, otherwise it's all
yeah.
gonna.
Us New Hampshire kids were when you booked Waterbury shows, we were like, oh, gee, because I always had to work the next day, and I'm like, I'm getting home at 3 o'clock in the morning, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
getting up at 6,
It's gonna
like
be rough.
I'm like, oh no,
I never
Crest
tell you
Falls playing in Waterbury. I'm like, oh no, like,
yeah, extra hour added on. Yeah, man, you guys were notable and recognized for your virtuous selflessness and driving all those ways. I mean, I remember doing a lot of the same and just like I'd get once I had a car up at school, it was all done. It was like every
yeah,
weekend. It's like you know, Daniel Strike Tiger and Death Tyrants are playing in like a coffee shop somewhere, like up in New Hampshire. Like I'll go. Why
yeah.
not? Like I'll hang
Well,
out. Like,
well, pretty much every video I have, you're in the front,
I
right,
mean, in
right
the
next
front,
to every single band. Doesn't matter where
obnoxious
it is.
clown in the front.
It could be in Boston, it could be in New Hampshire. It's like you're always right in the like
Yeah.
you can see you all the time.
I'd like to tell everybody, like in retrospect, I was just very excited, but like I look at those and I wince because I'm like, I must have been the most obnoxious person. I was like, I hope I wasn't too like, get out of the way. It's just like I always was like, I want to stay up close and I want to stay up front and I want to
Yeah,
like acknowledge how excited I am. But then I was like,
yeah,
damn,
yeah, exactly.
what a rough thing to swallow after a while. Everyone was probably like, all
Yeah,
right,
but
the guy.
the thing is with that is every person that I talk to that mentions your name says you're like an A+ guy,
Oh,
super friendly, nice. I've never heard one bad word about you.
I'll take that.
In my opinion, I think you're the greatest guy. You gave high school
Very sweet.
sweethearts. You
No, I
gave high
appreciate
school sweethearts a chance at UConn, where
it. Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, I played with Off Minor and Wolves, and
The
you
assistant,
know
right?
that.
Yeah.
Well, they were supposed to play, but Wolves replaced them.
That's right. That's right. Well, I appreciate. That's very sweet of you to say. I don't take for granted that that kind of reputation, and I am very thankful for it. And it has been. It's one of those things that, again, like years later, like it's weird when people like just come up to me and they're like, "Hey, you were that guy that I remember. You remember like this thing 12 years ago?" And I'm like, if I don't remember it, I'm just like, "Geez, I hope this was okay. I hope this was like a good memory." And they're like, "Oh man, I remember like you totally were like you like gave us a spot to stay, or like you were like I don't know, just like nice, like we figured out where we were all gonna stay that night or whatever." And it was like, "Oh wow, okay, like that's cool." Like I definitely was. I don't know. I just always thought like the idea was like everybody's doing this because like they have some weird jacked up reason why they're interested in this kind of like weird freak art. Like nobody's having like a great day all the time because otherwise they'd be
Yeah,
like living a different life.
Yeah.
Not to make that sound too like sad sappy, but I was just like, if we're all there, like we should all be having a good time together. We should all be looking out for each other. It shouldn't be
Yeah.
that like that complicated.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think the Connecticut shows that you set up were, I mean, just made you feel good from a different state. You know, we're coming from a different state. We're driving all the way down to Connecticut, and it was always like a friendly thing. Like we met a bunch of people that became friends. Like, you know, me and Brian, the guy I used to go down with, we became pretty good friends with Phil from Schematic,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I mean, we just always like hang out, and it was always like a really good time down there, and it just made you feel like almost like family when you took the trip down there.
Yeah,
And
I mean, that was definitely, I mean, not that I could control all the elements of that, but I think just because of like the rooms we were using and the spaces and the types of bands and the type of operation we were doing, it was like meant to be something where you kind of knew, not that like everyone needed to know who I was or who the other people were, but like you wanted to create an environment where you could, if you wanted to. Like,
yeah,
it wasn't like forced socialization, but it's like, it should be like an open kind of chill time where like you can go and not know everybody in the room, but feel like you don't need to like explain yourself, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
And that was always definitely I mean, that's why, I mean, I got the Friendly Fest poster hanging up there.
Oh,
And like, that's like, I mean, that's part of the reason why, you know, it was called that, was like, it's just meant to be like, hey, let's not like, you know, bum everybody out. Let's not price gouge everybody. Let's not make it some like elite thing.
yeah.
But, you know, I mean, as soon as you try to do that, somebody's on the out. But like, you know, I think for the most part, it was a successful experiment.
I mean, and speaking of Friendly Fest, what gave you the mindset to be like, I'm gonna do a fest, like I'm gonna do these fests, and did you go through some trial and error with bands, like, you know what I mean, like you tried to get this certain band and it didn't work out, and like how was the experience of it like all together?
It's funny because you think about like those four fests. There were four Friendly Fests. They happened in 3 years. So the first one happened because um, we had. So I used to try to book out Saturdays in that room. That first room at UConn was like upstairs,
Yeah,
and they would tell me what was available in terms of dates. And I never wanted to book on a Friday because everyone would get out of school. If they weren't at UConn, it was hard to get there for
yeah,
7 o'clock, and we
yeah,
had a time limit of like 11 or something. So I always went for the Saturday. So I would just book up I would ask for every Saturday that was available. And there
yeah,
was a Saturday in February that I had, and nobody, we didn't have anything planned. And I was booking a lot of shows. This was 2002. And I was booking shows with Josh from Red Squirrel Records
yeah,
at the time. And so I was talking to him and I was just like, I've got this date free and it's all day. Like they gave me the day. I don't know why. And we just
yeah,
had it. And so he was just like, well, it doesn't cost us anything. Well, let's just book a festival. You know, somehow we came up with that idea.
yeah,
And then because again, like at the time I was still booking like 6-band shows like a maniac. And like, you know, there's no reason for it. But that was again, like just the popular thing to do. And like,
yeah, yeah,
so it was like, well, if we can do all day, we can do like, I think we were like, let's do 16 bands or 12 bands or some kind of exaggerated thing. And then we thought, well,
yeah,
you know, again, it's just it'll be free, it'll be donations, and then we'll just have folks. We'll see who wants to play, and it was at that point it was all. So I think Jamie's on the call now. I don't know if he's still here, but I think the Wires might have played that show. I can't recall, but like anyway, the first Friendly Fest was like overwhelmingly Connecticut bands. I think In Public played. It must have been In Public, and There Were Wires played. I think they were like maybe the only non-Connecticut bands on that show.
yeah, yeah,
Then it was like every other Connecticut band that was like probably making my like rotation of opener act.
yeah,
And it went really well. It went really well. It was really easy. People enjoyed it. And it was a lot of fun. So then we were like, okay, well, we did that. And we had come up with the name and everything. And then we were like, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to top it? And so then Josh definitely is a really creative and sort of entrepreneurial type. And so he was just like, well, let's get this, you know, hall in Wallingford. It could be that much bigger. You know, let's just mine. And so we decided like, I was just going to mine like every connection that
yeah,
I established over that year and a half. And I think the second year or the second festival was later in June. So both of them were in the same year, February and then June.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that one was for Stella Ford. Yeah, for Stella Ford headlined that one.
Yeah.
And it was like just a lot of, again, like that one was like, I think there were 20 bands, and we decided
Yeah.
that 20 was like the max, and we did the 2 stages. So it was just band on opposite side of the room.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, then you get into the kind of rhythm where you have to one up yourself every year. So like, Strike Anywhere was the headliner the 3rd year. I always wanted to get Page 99 to do one. They always were interested in doing it, but the timing never worked out for when I would start to book those festivals in January. I think it was like the first week of January, the bands would start hearing from me, be like, this is the date.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? And, every year was like trying to get a different headliner but again, it was always like either like that New York Philly crowd or that Virginia crowd was definitely like where most of my interests were in terms of bands.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So like Page 99 was always one I wanted to do, but they were like friends with Strike Anywhere. So Mike Taylor put me in touch with the guys in Strike Anywhere. Strike Anywhere said they would do it. Page 99 couldn't do it. Majority Rule showed up. They played it. That was great. And then, then I was like, I want to book Pig Destroyer. So then I was like working with a guy from Relapse and trying to go through the other alternate routes, and that ended up working out. And again, I think Mike Taylor is definitely like a reason why a lot of those things got to happen, because he was just like a nice enough guy that would help make connections and help
definitely
pair you up with people. So the thing is like we never really wanted to work with like booking agents or anything like that. We always wanted to I just wanted to work with a band. We didn't have guarantees. I didn't make any, I made like, on those Friendly Fests, I think we made a little bit of money, but like otherwise it was like, I'm going to tell you what the cost is. You're going to look at everything, and all the money's going to go with you. And we're pretty like transparent about all of those sorts of things. And as a result of it, I think bands were then more willing to work with us, and we were able to get some exceptions where even like if I was working with an agent, I think ISIS, Pig Destroyer, and Mastodon were the only 3 bands I ever booked where they had agents. But the Pig Destroyer and Mastodon, it was the same agent, and the guy was like super chill.
Yeah.
And the ISIS agent was also because I'd reached out to Aaron Turner beforehand. So like Aaron Turner had basically told the agent, like, the show's going to happen, just make it happen.
Yeah.
And everybody was super nice about it. But then it was like, that was kind of the rep that you wanted, at least that I wanted to foster, was like, just work with me and I'll give you everything you need to get. And we're not no funny business. And so festivals, especially, like, I think it's ripe for some kind of misconception. I mean, those festivals there was, a couple hundred people. I think Friendly Fest 4, I think we had 700 people at it.
Yeah.
It was some kind of wacky amount of money that we were carrying around, and had in like a bag there that we had to be like, okay, let's not lose the bag. But like that was kind of the point, was like, let's keep it as like basic and simple and straightforward as we can, because that's what it makes it fun. But it's also not going to just like, the whole building's not going to light on fire anytime.
Well, they all went off, like the 3 that I went to went off pretty swimmingly with like no problems, no, you know what I mean? Everything went pretty,
We had mild. It's thankful that those shows didn't have more of. It was good they were as big as they were and not any bigger, because I think if you had something that became too big, you would have had to introduce a management element that just makes sense so people can be safe. It wasn't like we had a team of 10 running like a Friendly Fest. It was like a team of like 4 people. So like if something went down, like it was going to get weird really quickly, because there's not that many people involved in it. And if they were involved, they were like there because we asked them to like help with one thing. And it's weird to dangle like, here's everyone in a room, help me count dollar bills for one. Like, it's just like, they're not going to want to do it. I'm giving you like the most fun day of like your summer, and I'm asking you to like do something really nerdy and task oriented. It's not fun. But like, I don't know. I'm wired stupidly or just in a particular way where like that's fun for me. So I was like, this is great. Like, this is a fun time. Afterwards, I was like exhausted, but like it was definitely like a worthwhile experiment.
I mean, the last one, in my opinion, was the one of the greatest shows I've witnessed. You know what I mean? It was like Chaos Pilot, Pig Destroyer,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Majority Rule, Malady. I mean, the list goes on. It was like Van Johnson jumped in there for a quick
That's right.
set.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was. I was like blown away by the just the lineup itself.
Yeah, that was. I mean, they were all fun. That one was definitely like especially in retrospect, that was like the weird one where you're like, oh, Pig Destroyer played East Windsor, Connecticut, and a Boy Scout hall. Like, it's just like that's like a story. That and like the Mastodon one are like definitely like stories where you're just like, if you weren't there, it sounds like a thing that didn't happen.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're into that kind of music, but yeah.
Do you ever think of like maybe doing another one or?
I have not. I think.
Well, obviously not now because of COVID, but I mean,
right, yeah.
you know.
No, I mean, like people have asked me about that, honestly, and like it's definitely like such a team effort that like people just ask me about it, and like I feel weird not having like the people that had traditionally helped, because like Josh and Russ had just as much to do with it as I did, but I think I was a little bit more kind of
in the forefront.
Social face of it. Yeah, I was just
Yeah.
more like a chatty guy. So like they had just as much to do with it. So it's always weird to like think of those things without those people, because they have other things to deal with right now. But like I assume I see them regularly, but like I imagine like booking a show at where we are is probably not a high priority. It's just like a weird like whipping yourself like just like for no reason kind of hassle. I think for me, because I haven't booked a show in a while, but like actually no, that's not true. I booked a show in October, but like they keep dragging me back, man. I don't know, but like I someone who hasn't done it in a while, I will say, thinking back, so like my new band Ritual Clearing, we played our first and only show in October, and set that show up, and I think more of the challenge was because it was like black metal bands, or like we were a black metal band, so it's like what makes sense with a black metal band, like what my tastes are pretty varied, but like I'm not trying to confuse anybody. Like if it doesn't need to be 4 black metal bands, but it should be something that has like some thematic constant.
Yeah.
I think like thinking of a friendly fest, it's like I don't think my finger is on anything close to the pulse of what makes sense for that type of music. Like my musical preferences now are like weird psychedelic music and like black metal and death metal bands. Like so it's definitely like something where I'm probably not like gonna be booking like the standard like hardcore show and have like best like insider knowledge of what makes sense of it. Like I appreciate all of it and definitely listen to enough of it, but like I feel like that's taste making ability is probably not my forte. But like it's fun to book a show still. It's fun to play a show. It's fun as hell to play a show.
Yeah. With like how did they and the children like
ritual clearing show for somebody?
I listened to that when you first like posted about it. I listened to it. I'm not a huge black metal fan myself, but I listened to that and I like it a lot. It's
awesome.
It's I don't know if you've heard of a band called Vatnet Viskar, but they're like their earlier stuff is black metal, and those like your band and that band really like do something to my ears. You know what I mean? I like it. The typical black metal bands, I'm not. It's just not my forte, but I do like what you're doing now, and it's great to hear that like at our age, you're still doing heavy music. Like I keep emphasizing that on people that I talk to, that we're getting older, but you're still pumping out heavy music, which is inspiring to a lot of people, honestly.
Well, that's very nice of you to say. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that immensely. I'm happy I still get to do it, and I'm happy I get to do it with like people that I've known for quite a while. Like this Ritual Clearing, like Ryan Gorman's still in that band. My friend Brian Pause, who Ryan and I and some other folks did Iron Hand together from like once They and the Children broke up. We did Iron Hand probably from 2008 to 2015 or so. And it's nice to do stuff with those guys because those guys are like we're so close that it's like, wow, this is great. Like we don't, you don't have to like go scour the earth for people to do thing. And then in these bands, like I moved on from doing vocals, and I play bass.
Yeah.
I wanted that is the thing with getting older, is like nobody needs to hear what I have to say, like at all. Like I'm not somebody anyone needs to look toward. In any particular context of like what is Brian thinking about? Like nobody gives a shit. It's fine. But Brian Pause and I actually have another project called Internment Ashes that it's all his doing, and I do the vocals in that. But that's more like kind of playing a part there, because it's like it's a very spooky band, and it's a little bit more of like more of a storytelling, creative writing essay than anything else. But as far as like, bands with more of like a political slant, I'd rather leave that to the people that have more of a sort of like skin in the game, and like those are the people we should be like putting on pedestals and listening to what they have to say and acting accordingly. And those bands, are doing it. They're the ones crushing it right now. But it's fun. I mean, I had band practice ritual clearing. We practiced earlier today, and so it's not to like still be able to like get together, write songs, have a kind of purpose artistically, and kind of scratch that itch, and not have to get. I mean, that's the thing about fucking quarantine is like, and there's fun in it. I mean, and your posts have been a lot of this too, which has been helping kind of walk me through it, because I usually tend to something's done and I just put it in a box. To encounter like old stuff, like the nostalgia tour of quarantine is both like invigorating and weird at the same time, because it's just like, holy shit, that's a long time ago. And then it's like, oh, but like we're all still doing something, like it's kind of cool in that way. Like what I love seeing with your videos is like you have all those videos, and then it's like a hip hop video from like 6 months ago, 9 months ago, or something like that. Where it's, oh yeah, we're all getting out, we're all doing the things we got to do. Like, we're all involved in our art and scratching the itch. It's just trying to find like a way we're able to do it, and like not embarrass ourselves, hopefully, while we're doing it, but also like just have a good time and enjoy the moment.
Yeah, definitely. Can you talk about Nail Gun the Kitten to the Wall for a second?
Is Mark still on this? Is Mark still watching this? So Nail Gun the Kitten to the Wall was a joke. It was like an inside joke with a bunch of my friends, like a lot of those Waterbury guys. So the Waterbury guys were like they ran a little bit more of like an indie rock kind of vibe. And I think like bands like Page 99 or a Hassan Sabah, or pick your type at that time, where it was just like bands with lots of people in them, and bands with really long names, and bands that just all fell on the floor at some point and kind of just like sounded like it. And I say this with all the due respect in the world, but like if it just sounded like they made it up as it went along, it was kind of like the reoccurring insider joke. It wasn't taking fun at these bands, but it was just like, oh, our band. And so like one time my friend Matt just like was like, our band, and I was like, oh, and at the time I wasn't in a band, so it was like exciting to be in a band. And I was like, oh, you want to do a band? I was just like kind of a little hit my cards a little bit, but they were just like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this band. And I think Matt came up with the name, and he's just like, yeah, Nail Gun the Kitten to the Wall. And like the name was just like, I know what that fake band sounds like by that name.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it became like a joke. It was just like a weird reference point. And then we'd be like hanging out with a bunch of people, being whatever type of inebriated we were being, and then just be like, hey, you're going to be in Nail Gun too. It's going to be great. And then you're going to be in Nail Gun. And so eventually, like, all of a sudden we're like, how many people are in this? Like, have we like blindly said are in this band? And it was like, oh, there's like 13 of them. We just all said they were all in this band. And then we did the second Friendly Fest. So my friend, Phil, who you mentioned earlier, did a birthday show for me up at UConn, and it was Transistor, Breed Extinction, and The Way Down played. And I think most of the people who were in on that joke had all come to this surprise show that was held in my honor, which was very sweet. And they were just like, hey, let's do a Nail Gun set right now. And they were like, okay. And I just kept waiting for like the joke to not happen. And then like all of a sudden I'm holding a microphone in my hand for like maybe the first time. It was just like, let's just wing it. And we just like made up a bunch of stuff, nonsense. Like it was just noise, and it was just like
yeah,
to be kind of improvisational and goofy and stupid. And
yeah,
and everybody like acted accordingly because at that point everyone knew the joke. So like the
yeah.
people who weren't in the band like took their shoes off and started throwing them at everybody, and like it was just like a cartoon. And so then when we did the first like big Friendly Fest, the second one in Wallingford, I was like, I'm gonna put us on the mark, like on the flyer, like we're gonna be a listed band.
Yeah,
At that point, again, because everyone that we knew, all of our friends they were all going to shows, so it was like by the time they're gonna get here, they're gonna know the deal.
yeah,
Why in that video you have, which I'm so glad you have, you'll see that like there's one guy wearing like a ghost costume, and there's another guy who like does like somersaults like in between.
yeah,
And like there's like another, and everyone's like pretending to sing along to a band they know doesn't exist. Like
yeah,
it's all stupid, and yet we all got to do it. And because that was a Friendly Fest, I think like the lineup was like, I think Fred from Transistor was like playing in the band, and like
yeah,
dudes from Breed Extinction were playing in the band. Our friend Mike Riley is playing, like just people that like otherwise like. So it was just a ridiculous thing. I think we played one other show
yeah.
at the Newtown Teen Center, like maybe like a year or two later, and it was equally as bizarre. And like I think we threw a bunch of candy at everybody. And
I think
the
didn't mean to interrupt you. The first time I saw you guys, I think it was like Breed Extinction when it was a 4-piece, and it could have been that Breed Extinction Way Down show.
It must have been,
you guys, because it was like that. I saw Nail Gun twice, and it was Friendly Fest, and I'm pretty sure it was with Breed Extinction when they were 4-piece, and I'm pretty sure Way Down played too. So I might have been at that.
Must have been it. You must have been there, man. I think the gift, the birthday card from that show is they gave me a bowling ball that everyone had autographed, and then I had to carry on this bowling ball for like years after the fact and just be like, do I need this? I don't know how sentimental do I need to be? But yeah, I had a bowling ball from the first Nail Gun show that everyone just basically like told me to go like fuck myself, and it was like happy birthday, Brian, you piece of shit. Which is about what you want when you have like a birthday show. That's about as much vanity as you're allowed, I guess.
Also, I posted a video of you singing with the Wolves Ampere Punkestra. How was that? Obviously you were friends with all those guys, but it's great to see that. I was lucky enough to document that stuff.
I'm lucky that you were also lucky enough to document it, because it was such a weird, fun thing to do. So they wanted to do. So I asked them both to play one of the Friendly Fest. It must have been the third Friendly Fest, and those guys being those folks being those folks, they were like came up with like a wild creative idea, of course, and like, they're like, we're all gonna play as one band. We're gonna play like one set with all like 2 drummers and all. Or no, because Andy was the drummer for both bands, so it made sense. Where it was like one drummer, with just all the guitars and all that. And at the time, I had also been hanging out with all the guys in Wolves a lot. Like I would, if they were playing anywhere in New England, I would just go to the show and hang out with them. And then, like I said, that summer I was roadieing for them, and somewhere prior to that show, there was a show in Salem, Massachusetts that Wolves played with. There Were Wires, and I went up to it. And before the show, Tim, who played guitar and sang in that band, was just like, "Hey, man, I don't want to sing the last song. Do you know the words to the last song?" And I don't even think the song was out. So I was like, I don't think I do. And he was just like, "It's 2 lines. It's a 7-minute long song. There are 2 lines. Here are the lines."
Yeah.
And he was just like, just grab the mic and do it. And again, like, so thirsty to be in a band was I, that I was like happy to do it. And just like, also like, I hope I don't make an ass out of myself. And so I did it for the first time there, and it went really well. And then soon after that, I was doing the tour with them that summer. And it was, and I think like when they played that song, they would just like hand me the microphone.
Yeah.
And, that tour, at some point, Tim was basically just like, "Which songs do you know?" And I was like, "I know all these songs." And he's like, "You can be the singer today." And like there would be like dates of that tour where I was just like the singer for the band, which was like such an awesome. I loved that band so much that I was like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
get to sing in this band. Like I have no place here, but like this is awesome. And so then when we got back, we had gone back from the tour, and then they would play that song, and that's what the song I would sing. And
yeah.
it was just like, you know, Steve and I had met early on in like booking shows, and through him met Andy and Megan and Will, and through all them, Brad and Eric and Tim. And I mean, I still see those people. I still see Megan and Will, and particularly like regularly. I see Steven once in a while. Like
Yeah.
it's really cool that like that those are like kind of relationships or friendships that you foster through all of that. Where it's just like I met them because I liked their bands.
Yeah, yeah.
And like I never abscond from my fanboy like sort of genesis with a lot of these people, but to have done that was like kind of like a silly larf thing, but like it meant a lot to me certainly, and I'm
Yeah, definitely.
very happy and appreciative that they like let me do it. But yeah, that was how that kind of came to be. And so I think just before that was it a Light the Fuse show in wherever Tufts is?
I think it was like, yeah, Medford, Mass. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we played it. Maybe we played it too. All those shows in Medford bleed together as one long show.
Yeah, I think it was Transistor. You guys like the Fusion Run. They could have been, and then maybe it was
the Punk Express.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was where I think that was like the rehearsal for the Friendly Fest.
Yeah.
And I did that there, and then then we did the other big one at the show, and that was super fun.
Yeah, definitely. We got about what do we got? We got about 9 minutes, so I'm gonna shoot some quick questions, little rapid questions here.
For sure.
What was the first punk hardcore band show you ever attended? That you've ever attended?
First hardcore show. I went to a Murphy's Law Kitty Badass show at the Tune In 1996 or 97, I think. My cousin drove me there, and it was the weirdest thing. But it was the most amazing. I still have a T-shirt that I got from that show, a Murphy's Law T-shirt that I got from yeah, amazing show.
Your all-time favorite show that you played in any one of your bands? Like, what was like the most standout show?
Jesus. The last Blessed State show, I think Kiana was on here. Hey Jesse. I think if Kiana's still on here, the Blessed State, our last show was opening for Sebadoh, and that was like very personally fulfilling in a number of weird ways. Iron Hand played a show in a basement in Hartford, Connecticut with Mob 47, which is this like legendary crust punk band. Yeah. And that's probably one of my favorite shows, just because it was a weird show that we had no place really being on, in my opinion, but like they let us play it. And then Mob 47 was just like a bunch of like white New Balance sneaker dads, and it was like really weird, and I was like, I don't understand this. And then they played, and they absolutely just tore a hole in the universe, and it was so good. And I was like, that's it, like this is fucking awesome. Like it's so good. I'd say maybe that Mob 47 show.
That's great.
Yeah.
What was the all-time punk hardcore show you attended, like as a fan, or
Jeez, yeah, these are good. I should keep a list of these so I don't forget them all one day. But I was reminiscing the other day, because we talked about Dinosaur Jr. at the beginning, and Dinosaur Jr. played the attic of this bike shop in Amherst, Massachusetts, like 2 years ago.
Wow.
It was with like California X and Kindling and a few other bands, and those are like a lot of bands that are near and dear to my heart anyway. And then just got my friend and Ryan Gorman and I went and just saw Dinosaur Jr. play in the attic of this bike shop that was the attic of a bike shop. And like, guitar just standing right there. And it was like, again, a band that I've liked since I was in like 7th grade. I was just like, this is fucking weird, man. But like, this is cool. And like not, I mean, I still definitely a punk show. But yeah, it was just like the whole sort of like getting to watch my friends' bands. And then at the end of the show, this thing happened too.
Yeah.
It just kind of capped off a whole lot of cool stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What was the last movie you watched?
Oh, we watched some kind of bad horror movie on Netflix last night. It was like on Netflix. I think it was a Netflix movie. I think it was called like Insidious or something, and
Yeah.
it was very silly. And I couldn't tell. Like there was like times where I like forgot if we were watching it sincerely or there to like ridicule it, and then
Yeah.
it seemed very deserving of like mild to semi mild mockery.
Yeah.
But that was what
Um,
I watched.
well, what have you been listening to for hip hop? If you've been listening to any hip hop?
I am definitely not as well versed on like modern or current hip hop, but like I definitely we listen to a lot of music when we're like cooking and stuff, or just because we're in our house all the time. And I was listening to like "Damn" by Kendrick Lamar like not that long ago. Like I have that
Yeah.
on like vinyl when we put it out, and it's like, oh yeah, this record's fucking great. And just like like kind of went through it like. It was one of those things where like you still got to flip it 4 times because it's a double LP, but like we went through the whole LP twice.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was like, that's a good sign. Like
Yeah.
this is phenomenal, and it is what it is. Like it's not terribly deep cut, but that's definitely one that we probably most recently was up to.
Yeah. We got 4 minutes.
Damn,
I know these things go so quick. I could talk
is
to
it
you.
right?
You know, the good thing is like I'm trying to do this weekly and trying to get
You're doing great. You're doing phenomenal.
just a bunch of people that I respect and Jeff Howe from Reversal Man. I'll be talking to
Yeah, that's
next Sunday.
wild. Laying in the
Which,
big interviews, huh? That's great.
yeah, yeah.
You gotta get Mike Taylor on one of these. I feel like Mike would be a good storyteller and like definitely has got a good past. I feel like I mean, nobody's doing anything. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
there's people
that's why
doing
I'm
very
doing it.
important things, but like, I'm not doing shit. I'm just sitting here. So like, I don't know, but
Yeah, that's
I feel
what
like
I
a
mean.
lot of us probably are willing to
I
get.
would love to talk to Mike. I haven't reached out to him yet, but I would love to talk to Mike.
Like,
I mean, for the next 3 months, it's lined up. Like
that's awesome.
I've had bands like contact me, like people in bands from old bands, and been like, "Hey, I'll talk about so and this band," and I'm kind of blown away that people actually are interested to just talk about stuff like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man, it's great. It's like it's fun to like. I feel like it's old enough now where it's like again, like my whole thing was like, why dust something off that doesn't have any fucking dust on it? But like now you're looking around like, oh, this has fucking dust on it. So it's like, oh, okay, like, I guess it's okay to talk about it. Like, why the fuck not? Like,
Yeah.
everything's in like a weird timeout right now too. Where like, I don't know, it's not a fun time for anybody for a number of reasons. But I feel like if you get to kind of like reminisce in a way that like is helpful to you and not just like sad and weird about like the mortality of us all. But I think if you get to look at what you've done or the people you get to do it with, the friends you've like accrued through all of it, you get to be like, oh, that was fucking great. Like I'm glad I took advantage of the time I had. Like that's the least we can do for ourselves right now. So I'm glad.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, I appreciate, I reached out to you and you said definitely. I've had positive, like, people, like everyone that I've talked to has pretty much been like, yeah, I'll definitely do it. And just I think it's a fun thing to do. It's
Great.
and like I said, I'm set up for the next 3 months at least, or it could be 4 months with every Sunday I'll just be talking about, all kinds of stuff.
That's awesome, man. Well, since before we go, and since there's folks on the watching, like if anybody hasn't seen, it's in my Instagram story at the very least. Jeff Mardanis, however Jeff from Witches with Dicks just had like an aneurysm. Basically, he's been in the hospital for like a number of weeks, and he's going to go through a whole bunch of rehab. And I think he just like he's got to learn to walk again and stuff like that. Like Jeff, if you don't know Jeff, and you know me, trust me, Jeff is like the fucking best guy in the universe. And Jeff could use everyone a little bit of financial support right now. So there's a GoFundMe for Jeff that you can again link through my Instagram story. And if you don't know Jeff, again, you got $10. It'd be really awesome. I couldn't tell you more about how amazing of a human being this guy is, and he definitely needs all the support he can get. So if you are in a position to help at this very challenging time, I understand. But if you're in a position, it would be awesome if you could.
Yeah, definitely do that.
Yeah.
All right, Brian, we got about 30 seconds. I just want to thank you so much. It's good seeing your face again. It's been
man.
so many years.
I'm
But
glad everything's going so well, man. I love following. You know, it's funny how like we vicariously have to follow each other's adventures. I think so many of us right now because you can't catch up in the traditional ways. But it's really good to see you. You were always such a positive presence at those shows, and it was always like